Rushed into service across the earliest weeks of the Clone Wars, the slain and corpil V-19 Torrent Starfighter was the mainstay strike craft of the Republic Navy for most of the first half of the conflict. The design of the V-19 is framed around its folding S-foils, which serve to improve the fighter's heat radiation and atmospheric maneuverability. These foils are able to reconfigure to allow the craft to vertically land on the deck of a warship or on a planet's surface, but their complex mechanisms have been known to fail under sufficient stress. The V-19 is passably effective in large numbers, but the ship's brief design and production period resulted in unimpressive performance overall, forcing the Republic to rely heavily on pilot skill rather than technical superiority when engaging Confederate droid fighters. Plans were quickly developed to replace the Torrent with a newer fighter, but supply issues led to a range of delays. Eventually the fighter was replaced by the Z-95 Headhunter and Alpha Nimbus V-Wing, fighters that both proved far more popular among Republic pilots. Beginning a legacy of strike bomber designs that would last for many decades, the Cohen-Sayar manufacturing BTLBY Y-Wing served as the primary Republic torpedo bomber across the full 3 years of the Clone Wars. The ship carried an onboard hyperdrive and astromech unit that allowed the craft to operate alone or as part of a wing in almost any environment. These features allowed Y-Wings to be deployed on hostile flanks or left to wait in ambush without the support of larger warships. The bombers carried a twin-linked dorsal gun turret that could effectively defend the craft from attacking starfighters without forcing the bomber to alter its approach toward a target warship. Once in range, the ship was able to deploy up to 10 MG-7 proton torpedoes through its twin launch tubes, and could pose a deadly threat to the critical subsystems of even the largest Confederate vessels. A refined version of the Delta-7 light interceptor, the KDY Delta-7B Aethersprite, was an incredibly fast attack fighter used exclusively by members of the Jedi Order. The ship was designed to rely on the enhanced reflexes and awareness of a force-sensitive pilot, carrying barely any avionics, precise sensors, or flight support systems, to result in an extremely favourable thrust-to-weight ratio. The most noticeable change between the 7B and its predecessor is the relocation of the astromech socket from the port wing to the central spine. The added vertical space allows full-sized astromech units to be inserted, rather than simply astromech head modules, as had been the requirement on the Delta-7. The ship is almost entirely lacking in armour, and carries no shields, relying instead on speed and maneuverability, as well as pilot instinct, to evade danger and press the attack. Introduced late in the war to great effect, the Incom Sub-Pro Aggressive Reconnaissance 170 fighter bomber was one of the most fearsome and sophisticated strike craft to take part in the Clone Wars. Designed in collaboration between two of the most renowned shipwright corporations in the galaxy, the 170 was built to operate over huge distances, bringing an impressive amount of firepower and versatility to any engagement. The 170 carries extremely high-yield underslung guns that demand the use of 4 radiator S-foils to dissipate heat. These weapons are supported by a twin-linked tail gun and a pair of rapid-reload proton torpedo launchers for engaging larger vessels. A wing of ARC-170s is able to make a serious difference to the landscape of any battle, posing as much a threat to fighter wings as to warships, and presenting a difficult challenge for any Confederate commander. Also introduced in the final months of the war, the Alpha III Nimbus VWing Interceptor was a tiny and lethally effective dogfighter that had universally replaced the V-19 Torrent and Z-95 Headhunter by the end of the Clone Wars. The ship was one of the smallest ever designed to carry an astromech unit, and took advantage of unconventional vertical S-foils to dissipate heat from its large engines and weapons systems. Like the Delta-7B, the V-Wing stripped away systems to improve its thrust-to-weight ratio, most notably the ship's onboard life support system, which was simply replaced by a spacesuit to be worn by the pilot, establishing a precedent that would be carried on into the Empire's TIE fighter lineage. The Interceptor was one of the last ships in service to rely on hyperspace rings for FTL travel, as the ship simply lacked the internal space for an onboard hyperdrive. The V-Wing was a serious contender for the most effective dogfighter of the Clone Wars, threatened only by the impressive Tri-Fighters of the Confederacy. The last craft ever developed for use by the Jedi Order before the organization collapsed, the Kuat Systems Engineering Eta-2 Actus Interceptor, improves upon the design principles established by the Delta-7 series. Able to reach impressive speeds both in and out of atmosphere, the Actus was one of the most agile fighters ever developed at the time of its introduction. The ship carries a pair of medium-grade laser cannons, supported by 2 light ion cannons. These weapons boast an impressive rate of fire and are able to quickly dispatch most targets when used at close range. The fighter carries a full astromech droid that is positioned to perform rapid repairs in combat. This feature sees frequent use due to the fighter's lack of shields and meaningful armor, leaving the craft extremely vulnerable should its astromech be destroyed. It was this leaning by Republic designers toward lightly armored craft that rely on astromech units for navigation and repairs that inspired the Confederacy to begin the widespread use of buzz droids in space combat. Like the V-Wing, the Actus blazes the trail for a number of design styles that would eventually become staples of the Empire's TIE series, most notably the ship's cockpit design. Thank you for watching. Please remember to follow the link below to check out our announcement for our upcoming original sci-fi drama, The Sojourn.